So we're gonna go over some of the hardware that you'll see. And in class we have this display board that's hanging up in the shop, so I'll go through and kind of show it to you via video here. So we have different types of heads here. The first one in there all labeled is an oval head, and you can see, looking at it, it actually has like a little bit of an oval to it. Then you have a flat head, that one's pretty easy. And then a pan head, it's just a bit wider than an oval head. So it's actually, it's like if it was inside of a pan. If you take your pan, or you might make an omelet or something like that and flip it upside down, it has that kind of curved shape to it. Another example that you might see is a U-bolt. And so this has a U-bolt on it. It looks like a U. And then we have different types of sandpaper. This will be one of the questions on your test. On there, you start with the lower number and you work your way up to the higher number. So the first one on there is a 40 grit sandpaper. It's really bumpy on there. And then an 80 grit sandpaper, that's kind of a medium on there. 100 is that's the universal. If you're gonna do anything, just do the 100, because it's a good combination. It gets rid of a lot of stuff, but then it's not perfectly smooth, but it's good on there. And then a 220 sandpaper, that's getting it real smooth, baby smooth on there. And then we'll go through and look at some of the other, time here for class. Some of the other heads here, so lower our camera down a bit. All right, so then we have different types of heads. So this is the way on here, this one's called a socket cap on there, and you actually like put a socket in. You can put an Allen head in there. And then we go through and have a square, or a slotted, or flat, which is just one line. Then you have Phillips, that's probably the most common still. Phillips, remember, plus, looks like that. Then you have a square drive, which actually looks like a square. So that's easy to remember on there. And then you have a Torx, which is probably the next most common now, which is this kind of star drive on there. And so it actually has 6 points, a 6-pointed star. And then the hex head actually is a hexagon on top. So there's a hexagon right here. The reason why the Torx is becoming more popular is with the original was slotted there, you were twisting and your screw was being pushed in two places. Like as you turn, it's getting pitched right there and right there. And so it's pretty easy for that force to only go in two spots to kind of overwhelm it and then twist out. And then you had your Phillips, in which it goes in 4 spots because it's being pushed right here, right there, kind of at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock at once, and then twisting. The square drive is the same thing, being pushed in 4 spots, but because the square one actually pushes into it, it looks a little cleaner. They just never really took off in the United States. The Torx drive has pushed it in 6 spots at once, and each time it pushes, there's being less force on each of them, and so that makes it less like what we would call strip or like pull out of there, on there. Things to put in together, there's the dowel peg, which is a way that you can go through and put something in, and then there's a biscuit, that's what they look like right there. That's a true biscuit for those biscuit joints. You have a clevis pin, goes through and does it. It holds a pin in place in a way. A wedge anchor can put something into concrete, so this actually gets driven into concrete on here and then gets wedged out so it won't come out, and then you can bolt into concrete. A cotter pin goes through the clevis pin to hold something in place. And then we have other types of screws on here. So we have a body bolt, it's really useful on a car, again with that hexagon head on there. A sheet metal screw is super pointy. They're also usually self-tapping, which means that they have a drill bit at the end and they can just drill through metal and then go in. Because they're going through metal, they gotta be really, really sharp. Drywall anchors is giant, big ones on there because drywall is really flimsy, and so it needs big threads in order to bite into it. Concrete anchors are usually this bluish color, and they're coated with a rust-resistant coating because you don't want rust getting into your concrete. And so they go through and will anchor into concrete, actually like drill right into concrete. Pocket screw go inside of something else, so they go like underneath something, super clean, super small hole on there so you won't actually see it. Plastic cap are good for roofing or tarps or those kinds of things. It's got a big plastic cap, so once you make a hole in it, this big piece of plastic covers the hole so you won't have something go through. And then you have some other inserts on here. You have a threaded insert, which will get pushed in as big teeth to get pushed into the wood, and then it actually makes a threaded hole so you can actually go through and do it. Screw eye, you've probably seen. Fence staple is good for adding up fencing, or a cable staple has this plastic on here to put up any kind of cable around your house. More types of screws on here. So on here you have a lath screw. Again, lath is hanging up like this metal net that goes underneath stucco. And so you're gonna go through and add that in. Then you have your kind of classic wood screw on here with both fine or coarse threads on here and then fine threads. Fine threads, it looks like there's much more of them. You have a drywall screw on here, again, usually this blackish color. Self-tapping again with the super pointy end on the end, so it actually has a little drill bit on the end of it. And then we get into some different types of nails. So this spiral one on here, it's kind of a cross between a screw and a nail. It has these spiral cuts out on them. We've talked about finish nails, really small, so you can hide the hole. Then you have a double-headed nail, which are super awesome because it has two heads. So you hammer it in, and the point of this is for it to come out. So you use it a lot for making concrete forms. You hammer it all the way in, and then the problem with hammering a nail all the way in is it's kind of a pain. You can get underneath it eventually with a hammer, but this one has two heads. So it hammers into this head, and then it makes it really easy because you can pull out on this one. Roofing nail has this big flat head on there. Push it down. Then you have those smaller tacks and brads that you've looked at in your notes. Again, the box screw is on there, a little bit thinner than your common nails. And so, sorry, box nail. So a little bit thinner on there and often not coated in anything. They're just plain metal. While the common and nails on there are coated with this kind of yellow thing on there, and it's a heat activated glue. Whenever there's a lot of friction, like you're hammering a nail into something, it heats up and then actually glues itself to the wood. So there's a heat activated glue on there. Coming all the way over here, hold this one. All right, on there you have your thumb screw. So again, this one you can turn with your thumb right there, just go through. Machine screws or bolts, we kind of use both terminologies for them, but you have machine screws and bolts on there. Then you have hex bolts, again with this hexagonal head, really good on there. A carriage bolt goes underneath your butt. So when you're having a carriage, it has this big smooth top to it. So if it was underneath your seat, then you'd be okay with it. Lag bolt on there is, again, the strength of a bolt, the threads of a bolt with the pointy tip of a nail or a screw. So it's kind of a good cross between on there, really strong. T-nuts, again, have these teeth that go into them. So they go through and can actually go in there. There's a lock nut, and a lock nut, you can see from the side, has an extra little bit on here. And inside there's a washer, and it makes it very difficult for it to come off. You can do it, but it makes it very difficult, and it locks it in place. Jam nut's a little bit thinner. Oh, the next one's down there. So it can jam in place. A tooth washer on there, and then here's just a regular old hex nut, just a big hexagon. The wing nut is just for you to twist your fingers. Flange nut has this big flat part on there called a flange. That's what the flange is. A lock washer has this push to it, and there's that little lip on there, and what happens is it's actually not a complete circle. And then when you push it, the metal's been bent, and so you have to screw it and force the metal to go flat, and the whole time it's acting like a spring and pushing up on the nut to try and go, which means it's not gonna spin. Then you have a big flat fender washer. Finish washer looks really nice. And then the castle nut, again, that's always easy for people to remember because from the side, it looks like a castle. There we go. It has a big castle teeth on there, and you'd put a pin right through it. So it would go like on one of those with threads on it, and then one of those pins would go through it. So those are all examples of different hardware that you might see. And then we have the different types of wood that you might see as well, and I'll do that in the next video.